What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Light and Lamp podcast. I am here with Tim,
Hello.
and this week we have more of a news-heavy week as opposed to a deep dive on teams and their players. But we will obviously certainly be talking about certain players and teams. But some news that actually came out. This episode is being recorded around 6:30 on March 10th of 2021. So the news came out today that the NHL and ESPN have made official their partnership for game streaming going into the future. So I'll kind of give you like a TLDR, quick little rundown. It's a 7-year TV streaming and media rights deal, exclusive coverage of the Stanley Cup Final on ABC in 4 of the 7 years, half of the Stanley Cup playoffs on ABC and ESPN each season, 25 exclusive national regular season games on ABC or ESPN. 75 national regular season games will stream exclusively on both ESPN Plus and Hulu. And the out-of-market streaming package, formerly known as NHL TV, that you used to purchase through the National Hockey League themselves, is now going to be part of an ESPN Plus subscription. From what I understand, you don't have to pay extra on top of your ESPN Plus subscription. I believe it's just part of it, which I'm really hoping is the case, because I buy NHL TV every year, and now I'll have to subscribe to ESPN Plus and pay monthly instead of the one big lump sum that I paid towards the beginning of the year.
You can actually do a monthly payment on ESPN Plus. I have it currently. You can pay once a year, and they give you a discount, like a percentage discount.
Oh, you can pay annually for them? That's probably what I'll do then.
Yeah, you can pay annually for them. That's what I do
Because
right now.
I'd rather just do like what I do with NHL TV, where I just pay for it in the beginning of the season and I just forget about it and I just get to watch all the hockey I want.
Yeah, it's some like $120 or $180, something like that for a year.
There was like some package. They were talking about like package deals where it's like, oh, you get Disney Plus and Hulu Plus and all this other stuff. You know, as long as I
It said
get my out of market games, that's really all I care about.
it said all for $13.99 or $20 per month.
Yeah, you get Hulu Plus, Disney Plus, and ESPN Plus, I think, because they're all one big media conglomerate now.
Mhm.
Um, so I mean, as somebody like I said, every year that subscribes to NHL TV, um, I I have faith that the NHL is not gonna botch this and it's not gonna be a debacle. They're throwing around the word exclusive a lot, which kind of makes me a little bit nervous. Just because you can sometimes run into issues with that, like, oh, you're already paying for this service but you don't have this service or whatever. But seeing as how ESPN and Hulu is all kind of one big happy family, I don't think it's going to be a problem. um, that being said, essentially what NHL is doing here is they're trading in NBC and NBCSN and NBC's networks for ESPN's networks here. So um, I think it's a good thing. I think, ESPN is obviously known as the worldwide leader in sports, and hockey has been basically completely non-existent on ESPN for years. Really, ever since ESPN stopped streaming NHL games, they have basically never talked about hockey ever. Um, and I think it's a good thing because, the average sports fan who might not know about hockey probably might watch a lot of ESPN. Maybe one day they just so happen to catch a game on ESPN. They're like, oh, let's just sit down and let's see what this is all about, and go from there. So I think, exposure wise, it's also going to be great for people that already own ESPN Plus and Hulu who don't watch hockey. Maybe one night they're bored and they're like, well, I already have Hulu and ESPN, so like I'll just check it out and see what's going on. So I mean, I think from an exposure standpoint, this is going to be good for the league. My only concern is the quality of
ABC
analysis.
streaming.
Well, I think ESPN's done a good job in the quality.
ABC, I said.
Oh, ABC, yeah. I mean, there could be some issues there for sure. But there already are some NHL. I mean, some of the Stanley Cup playoff games nowadays are on ABC anyway. And I think they do a decent enough job. I mean, my main concern, honestly, besides the whole amount of exclusives they're throwing around here, is just the coverage. I just hope that the NHL does their best to keep a lot of the analysts that they have already on these NBC networks, because I think they do fantastic work. And to be honest with you, most of the people at ESPN have probably never watched a hockey game in their life. So that's kind of a concern for me. Like, do you have any concerns about, the quality of analysis or a play-by-play that we might see out of ESPN here?
Honestly, not really. I presume that they'll bring in a bunch of new young cats. Hopefully, I'm hoping. Hopefully, it'll be like maybe TSN was when the NHL brought it back over years ago.
Do you So, like, as a hockey fan, would you rather them take chances on? I mean, the realistic situation is you're going to see both, right? You're going to see old faces that renew their contracts on new faces, right? But like, would you rather them retain more of the talent like that works the NBC games now, like Patrick Sharp, David Ambrose, and those kind of guys, or
I wouldn't mind changing it up, honestly. I'm kind of sick of most of the announcers. Patrick Sharp is newer though, so I don't really mind him that much. But I actually don't know though, because I feel like a lot of the great memes that we have are because of the stupid analysts and the stupid things that they say. Like not even necessarily like actually like, unintelligent things, but just like the absolutely Canadian things they say sometimes.
just their
Or
mannerisms?
yeah, like the abs like how Patrick Sharp is just a Ken doll essentially, and like the dude looks like a perfect specimen. Like he played hockey for 20 years and he just got no scratches, no scars, no teeth issues. His hair is perfect. Dude looks like a fucking model up there.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, the NBC, the national crews that they have now, like guys like Sharp, Anson Carter, they have Dominic Moore,
Bugsy.
yeah, him as well. And even when they have like AJ Malesko, I think that these crews they do a really really good job, and I really enjoy the play-by-play announcer lineup that they have. So I do hope, for me personally, I hope they bring most of this talent back, whether it be the play-by-play or the studio analysts and whatnot. But what do you think this is going to do for just the game in general? From an exposure standpoint or a fan base standpoint, like, what do you think this is going to do for the National Hockey League?
I hope that it would increase revenue. And I hope that it would give the NHL the opportunity to now work maybe streaming in the female hockey league. Maybe try and work something out with that through the NHL.
You mean the
Maybe stream
NWHL?
or no, I'm saying the NHL works something out with them. Like because the NHL has now the streaming service of Hulu and ESPN Plus on their side. So maybe
Yeah,
we'll start to see some further development of hockey streaming overall, not just through the NHL.
you know, I this is kind of going back to a conversation that we had on an earlier podcast about we were just confused as like you know obviously the NWHL isn't partnered with the NHL the same way the NWA is, or the NWA, the WNBA. Yes, believe it or not, the gangster rap group NWA is not affiliated with the National Hockey League.
Crazy. Despite Snoop Dogg's enthrallment with hockey.
Yeah, the WNBA is officially partnered with the NBA, as far as I know. The NWHL is not partnered with the NHL, but we did have a good conversation about our hopes for that kind of thing. And now that they have, ESPN, ESPN Plus, and Hulu Plus all available to stream, I would very much like to see if the NHL could work something out with the NWHL, where they say, "Hey, let us throw some cameras in your buildings."
Well, you
And
saw MSG host the first game for that exhibition series or whatever they were doing.
the Pro Women's Hockey Association, I think, the
I don't
PWHA. It
I
was
don't
like
remember
they were
which group.
hosting. I know what you're talking about. They have like six teams, I think, that are playing there right now, and
I'm
some of
saying though,
that.
so if they could work out a deal with to get that on, that would be cool. Because part of the issue with women's hockey is it's just never on. So I have no
Yeah.
interest in it, just based on like media attention. and I wouldn't mind throwing those games on,
Yeah,
especially just check them out there on Hulu.
I mean they're doing a pretty good job with that stuff right now because I know that the women's games that you're talking about are being streamed on NBCSN. Um, but that being said, I 100% agree. If the NHL could just say like, to be fair, a lot of the buildings that the women's hockey teams were playing in, like the Metro Riveters played in the Prudential Center. Um, I know the Toronto team that they were just awarded, or I think they're playing in it's not the Air Canada anymore, the Scotiabank Arena. That places that already have like a lot of media equipment set up. I think it would be really cool if the NWHL made an agreement with the NHL, and the NHL said, we have all this equipment here. Let's just throw you on ESPN Plus or Hulu to start. That way, you build a fan base with the streaming service, and eventually, you work your way up to like TV deals and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I would totally be down to. And I was talking about this, last episode that I already own NHL TV. Like, let me watch some NWHL games. Like, I'll throw on a Metro Riveters game and just check out, not well, the Lamro sisters retired now, but you know,
That's what I'm saying. Even just checking out the highlights, maybe just pique some interest in like the sport.
I
Like
I, I completely agree. I think it'd be a really good thing, not just for women's hockey, but for hockey as a whole.
yeah, like I would love to see maybe KHL games get in there, QWHL games, different.
Uh, I don't think you're ever gonna get KHL games just because of
No, probably not. I'm
they're
just saying
super
like
protective, but
no, you understand what I'm saying though. Like I'd love to get the different leagues in there.
I would love to have the
And
CHL
ESPN
games be an option, but I think the issue is since again technically the Canadian Hockey League isn't affiliated with the NHL. I know that they have their own like TV packages up in Canada. Um,
yeah,
I
but Hulu has Canadian TV is the thing.
yeah
So Hulu
yeah
already streams like like they already have like all the big Canadian networks exclusively to Canada. So I don't see why there couldn't be something maybe worked out now.
I would absolutely watch CHL games all the time because the level of play in that league. I mean, you're watching the next generation.
Yeah, so I don't see why we couldn't like maybe if with a growing interest in hockey on Hulu, maybe eventually they'll expand into other markets. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you consider that however many people already subscribe to Hulu. I forget the number, but um, let's say for argument's
It's
sake,
30 million something I think is what it said
yeah.
in the
So
article.
think about that. Now the 30 million people that already have Hulu now have access to streaming NHL games, and they didn't have to pay anything extra for it. The chances that a decent number of people within that 30 million are going to say, "Oh, okay, I've never seen this before. Let's flip on a game. Let's just go. Let's see what's on tonight, right?" And just flip on like a Toronto Boston. Well, I mean, not this year because of a different division, but like a Toronto Boston game or something like that. Like I think that the exposure, just by virtue of had given access to something that you already paid for. And that's kind of like what we were saying last year or last couple episodes ago with the women's hockey, that if the NHL threw the women's hockey league on NHL TV, well, I already pay for NHL TV, so of course I'm going to check out the extra content I just received. That kind of like an argument can be made there. So I'll say I'm cautiously optimistic, only just because we know how Disney can be with some of their stuff. They are, we'll say, an interesting company to say the least when it comes to protecting their assets. So hopefully, the NHL is taking all this into consideration, and I have faith in the NHL to do right by us, to do right by the fans, and I just hope that Disney just lets it be what it needs to be, and that the quality doesn't take a hit, and I hope it's just a seamless transition. I mean, there's going to be bumps along the way, there's going to be some bumps on the road, but overall I would say I am cautiously optimistic for this news, especially given just how good the NBC streaming services were in general to the NHL. They got some big shoes to fill in ESPN, but there's definitely possibilities. So I'm very excited for that. Do you have any last minute thoughts on this new news?
No, that's about all I have to really say about it. We just about touched on it all.
So other news, and this is probably what's going to take a decent chunk of the episode. The Tom Wilson hit on Brandon Carlo. Tom Wilson has been suspended for 7 games, which, if I pull up a calculator here, 7 is about 12.5% of the entire season, 7 games out of 56. It was a high hit, a headshot, a hit into the boards of 24-year-old defenseman Brandon Carlo for the Boston Bruins. And Alex Ovechkin had some choice comments being made about the suspension. In fact, to quote him, he called it, quote, kind of a joke. He said that to me, it's a hockey hit. If it's a suspendable play, then all hitting is going to have to be removed. Before I go on my huge rant, because I'm going to just rant in your ear for a little bit here, what did you think about the hit? What did you think about Ovechkin's reaction? The whole situation? What are your general thoughts on what occurred?
The hit was stupid. I don't know why he did it. Ovechkin is an absolute ape for saying it's kind of a joke. He's kind of a joke of a captain right now with, what is it, he have 9 points on the season? Yeah, you're kind of a joke, buddy. Especially when Evgeny Kuznetsov is leading for the Hart Trophy right now, and you're over here bumming it up. But that's neither here nor there. Ovechkin's just a plug. So that's my opinion about that. Tom Wilson's an absolute clown, but it has been 2 years since he was suspended last. But we also can't forget that before that he was suspended how many times?
So he has been suspended in total 5 times and fined by the NHL twice. One of those suspensions being the 20-game ding he got a couple years ago in the playoffs. So do you think that this was justified? Do you think he got off easy? Do you think 7 games is about right?
I think he should have been given the what I can't remember his name right this second. Oh my god, the 25-game suspension.
Raffi Torres?
He should have got the Raffi Torres deal, in my opinion.
Do you think that's because is it because of the hit or just because of his repeated lack of respect for anybody besides himself?
I think it's just because he doesn't care. He's just a reckless player because he doesn't get hurt himself. So he just idiotically throws himself around and just bumps into people to try and knock them off their game. But in reality, when you're kneeing someone as you're going onto the bench and they're coming and skating past you, you're just destroying their career, not getting like some form of advantage.
Right. So I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here because I've just been stewing about this, getting angrier and angrier the more I think about it. I'll be the first one to admit that I am not a big Tom Wilson guy. In fact, I have basically little to no respect for him as a hockey player. I've said the last couple seasons when he was able to avoid suspension that he's a decent player. He could be a really, really good player if he just wasn't an idiot.
I believe we're on quote. I believe you're on quote saying he's the best power forward in the league, or Steve is.
That was Steve.
I know Steve is. Yeah.
Steve said he's the best power forward in the league. I said he could be a fantastic player if he was just stop being such an idiot. And this last action just goes to prove that he has learned absolutely nothing. So Tom Wilson has been in the league for 8 years now. Okay. He's been suspended 5 times. I don't know if that number counts this latest one. So potentially 6. And fined twice. That means in terms of discipline numbers by the league, He's been disciplined by the league between 7 and 8 times, which means on average he's basically getting suspended or fined once a season, which in and of itself is absolutely ridiculous. Okay, you should not be getting blasted for 20 games and then the next season going back for more. And the guy, as a young player, you could make an argument for him like, oh, he's a young player, he's fighting for his tooth and nail roster spot, he's trying to make the team, so he's going to take a little bit of a chance with some of his hits. I get it. He's 26 now. There's absolutely no excuse for the things that he's doing on the ice. There's absolutely no excuse for his antics in the playoffs last year. There's absolutely no excuse for hitting a guy in the head 2 inches away from the boards. I don't know what Ovechkin is looking at. I don't know what replay they showed him. They must have showed him a different replay than the actual hit, because Brendan Carlo's head was the principal point and most likely the only point of contact on this hit. His head was 2 inches away from the boards, and Wilson had every chance to let up on this hit. This wasn't one of the hits where the guy goes to throw a shoulder to shoulder and he turns at the last second and he catches him in the numbers and he goes into the boards. This is not one of those situations, okay? Brendan Carlo was tied up on the boards, and Wilson had enough time to recognize the play, read the play, take 2 strides, and decide to put this man in the hospital, which he did. Brendan Carlo was in the hospital over this hit. And that's a joke, okay? That's absolutely ridiculous. And I honestly think that Wilson got off very easy. He should have been given at least 10, in my opinion. Bare minimum 10, probably more. I wouldn't disagree with him getting a 20-game suspension. Give him half the season, because this is getting ridiculous now. And it's not like he has a pattern of different suspendable actions. It's headshots. It's always headshots. The exact type of hit that the NHL is trying to get out of the game. Okay? And this guy has shown a repeated propensity for hitting guys in the head when they're in a vulnerable position. It's got to stop. It's just got to stop. And to move on to Ovechkin's comments, by the way, Alex Ovechkin, who he himself was fined the other day for spearing Trent Frederick in a very sensitive area. We'll put it that way. That's a joke. And you wonder why, nobody in the NHL looks at the Washington Capitals as a model team. Nobody looks at the Capitals and says they've got a strong leadership group, because nobody on that team is stepping up and saying what needs to be said. Listen, I understand to a certain extent you have to go to bat for your teammates, but you can only go to bat for them so far. Nobody on that Arizona Coyotes team was going to bat for Rafi Torres after what he did to Marian Hossa, because you don't defend an action like that. I get it. Ovechkin can't come up on the stand and say, well, Wilson's a dirty player and I don't want to play with him. But when you get asked a question, you can say, well, Wilson, he maybe made a wrong call and he's got to deal with the consequences. That's a lukewarm milquetoast answer that you can give to that kind of question. But instead, Ovechkin says that if that's a suspension, every hit needs to be taken out of the game. I don't know what he was watching. I mean, this is
or he could have just said something along the lines of like, oh, well, I'll have to watch the review. I don't really know right now. He didn't have to. He just didn't have to answer the question.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, after watching his wife respond to the whole COVID situation like she did, I don't think anyone should be surprised that he came out and said that it was a joke.
Yeah, and the thing is, nobody in the entire Capitals organization has said the right thing. Their captain is defending it. The coach hasn't said anything. Peter Laviolette, I'm calling you out. He's been completely silent on it. The GM, who pays this guy, Tom Wilson, hasn't said anything publicly. At some point, even if you want to put it in terms of dollars and cents, the GM needs to come out and just be like, you need to stop getting suspended because I need you playing on the ice.
I mean, he lost $310,000. Was that the amount?
Something like that, yeah.
Which honestly isn't really even enough in my opinion.
It's a slap on the wrist for him.
You saw Kyrie Irving, and the contracts aren't the same, but You saw Kyrie Irving get suspended like $700,000 just for a COVID protocol misconception. That whole party thing. Or no, it was. I think it might have even been more than $700,000 that he lost due to that.
I mean, Tom Wilson makes $5.166 million a year. He doesn't care about $300,000. And everybody from top to bottom, from start to finish, the GM, the coach, and especially the captain, who he himself was fined for a dirty play, is not saying anything. And you wonder why nobody in the NHL looks to Alex Ovechkin as a model of leadership, because he's not. Quite honestly, let's not beat around the bush. The guy's not a leader. I don't know what else to tell you at this point when he's spearing guys in the nuts, and then a week later defending a headshot that sends a guy to the hospital.
The numbers for you are: he was fined 50,000 and he forfeited 800,000 from game money because they get paid per game in the NBA.
Oh, for Irving?
Yeah, he was fined so he lost $800,000 from gameplay and was fined 50,000.
I mean, something's got to be done, and clearly the suspensions don't faze Wilson because he keeps doing it. So maybe his captain standing in front of the media and calling him out would have got his head on straight. But Ovechkin, the thing is, Wilson is still 26, so there's still an opportunity here for a teachable moment. There's still a chance you can turn a very bad situation and turn this into a teaching moment, that he might not do this for the rest of his career. But instead, Ovechkin gives him an out. The coach doesn't say anything. The GM doesn't say anything. And again, maybe we now have an answer as to why the Capitals couldn't get out of the second round for how many years. And by the way, since they've won the Stanley Cup, still haven't been out of the second round. Maybe this is the reason, because there's no leadership in this locker room at all. It's a joke. The Capitals are an absolute joke of an organization for the way they've handled this whole thing. I don't know what else to say, and quite honestly, I'm severely disappointed that a coach like Peter Laviolette and an organization like the Capitals, who had been building themselves a little bit of a better reputation over the last couple of years, finally having some playoff success, would just throw it all down the toilet like this. I mean, it's a joke. It is. I have no respect left for Tom Wilson. And Ovechkin lost a lot of my respect in this aspect as well. Not in terms of his skill. He's obviously a fantastic hockey player, but he's just not. You can't call yourself a leader if this is how you're going to act when one of your teammates is doing this. Bottom line.
It's a schmuck thing to say.
It's just, like I said, you don't have to come out and call him out and be like, Wilson's a dirty player, but you don't go to bat for a guy like that when he has a history like this. If this was his first suspension, it's like, okay, he's not usually like this. Maybe he made a bad call. This is his fifth suspension for the same play. It's a headshot every time. This guy is putting people in the hospital now. It's ridiculous. Like, how much can you really go to bat for a player like this? So here, to sum it up, we have a captain who speared a guy in the nuts and got a fine, going to bat for a guy who just got his fifth suspension for 7 games, for his fifth, all 5 of his suspensions are headshots, that put a 24-year-old kid in the hospital. It's a joke. The organization is a joke. I don't know what else to say other than I've lost a tremendous amount of respect for the Washington Capitals organization with the way that they, as from top to bottom, head to toe, from GM to players, have handled this. I don't know what else to say. Maybe am I being a little bit harsh because it's new? Maybe am I a little bit more angry because it just happened? You can say that, but it's not like this is Tom Wilson's first trip to the press box. I mean, he'd been dinged for 20 games before, and you think that would have woken him up. That was a quarter of the season, and he's still doing this dumb stuff. So, how much longer do you put up with this? Honestly, I don't know, and I don't have any respect left for him, and quite honestly, don't have a lot of respect left for the Capitals organization after this situation.
Yeah, I don't really have much to say other than I think I'm not sure I agree with you to the extent of the whole Ovechkin point, sticking up for him. I think there's not really much to say about that, other than Ovi probably caught a comment offhand, said an offhand comment, and it just happened to go down like that. Like when he's, I would assume that when it's just like when someone asks you a question, you don't want to be bothered. You just give them the answer that you like, that you just feel in your heart. That's not necessarily logical.
I mean, the issue is not only did he say that, but then he like if he had if the whole quote was, um, it's just a joke, like it was offhand. But he said, and I'm gonna read his whole quote. I mean, to me, it was a hockey hit. If this is a suspendable play, then all hitting really is going to probably have to be removed because he didn't take any strides. He didn't target the head. He did. He didn't. The player was up against the boards. He was upright, and Tom hit him in the head. He wasn't. He was leaned over. I hope the player is okay, but for me, I think the call on the ice was correct last night. That hit happened so many times through the course of the game where somebody hit somebody against the boards. Not really because he hit his head. So I think we're still hopeful that Tom will be available to us. He's not. He's suspended for 7 games.
Yeah, I don't think the quote is that bad though.
It's just incorrect.
I,
All of this information he's giving you is incorrect because it's none of it is actually what happened. No.
yeah, because it's like that's what he's not supposed to be giving correct information. He's just a player.
But if you're gonna go on record and make a statement like this, then at least you should watch the replay. Like, at least know what you're
I'm just saying,
talking about.
I don't think he should be taken so seriously in this matter.
I
I
mean,
think Ovechkin is just having a bum ass season, and he's just angry, and he's just saying a bunch of stupid shit and doing stupid things. Because that's what that spear was. That spear was absolutely idiotic. If you watch like the breakdown of the whole play, the kid is just all over him. He's just giving him some business, and you know what? Actually, I don't know if I hate the spear play that much.
I mean, listen, this.
The kid literally dropped his gloves earlier in the game, swung on him, and then just stood there.
I mean, listen.
And
I'm
then
not.
he put his gloves back on and skated away. So
I'm.
I don't really have an issue with that whole spear thing. I don't have an issue with Ovi, and this is kind of just my point. I have a deep issue with Tom Wilson and the way that the league handled it. And Marshawn brought up a good point that the league needs to stop worrying about stupid penalties and worrying about like serious ones when they're reviewing them. Because there's no point in reviewing a fucking offsides that the ref is supposed to catch when you could review a headshot penalty that they can't catch. That's a lot more serious to the game.
Yeah, I mean the Trent Frederick thing. Listen, I'm not gonna stand here and go to bat for Trent Frederick because I don't like the guy either. I mean, he's a rookie, but he's kind of got a little bit of Matt Cook in him. He likes to throw his elbows around and then drop the gloves with people that don't want to fight him. My point in bringing it up was it's just a bad look when you're the captain and you're also being fined at the same time this is happening. But you bring up a good point, which is we have 4 officials on the ice and none of them made a call on that. The one official that was below the goal line was screened by the play, so you can argue that like he didn't see the headshot, which is fine. What is the back referee looking at? And the 2 linesmen can stop play and talk to the referees if they feel like the referees should make a major call. That's in the rulebook. The linesman can stop the play and go to the guys with the armbands and say, "Listen, we got to take a look at this."
I would also like to point out that the guy was on the ice. It's not like they didn't have time to review the penalty before they called it.
I mean, they didn't call a penalty. Period is the issue.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like they had time before. Like I was like between when the play happened and when like play ended. Is just my point. To call something, and they just chose to call absolutely nothing and do nothing.
I can tell you 100% that.
And I'm not saying that they should be reviewing every hit that a guy goes down on the NHL, because did they miss it? Yeah. Can they not review it? No, they can't. I get that, but I'm merely saying that the NHL kind of needs to get its priorities straight a little bit with what they're pulling up these reviews for. I'm kind of I don't like the review system.
I think, the
I
issue
don't
is
like what they
that
use cameras for.
I think the major issue is that you know, the whole point in they added this year the review of the 5 minute major was to make the officials more comfortable with calling something that they may or may not, if they think they saw a 5 minute major, it's supposed to make them more comfortable in calling it that, because then they can go review it and be like, oh, okay, this wasn't as bad as it looked, we'll give it a 2. That was the whole point of that. It was to incentivize officials to call what they might think are dangerous hits, because they can review it and walk it back. It's not as big as it used to be, because back in the day, you called a 5, that's it. Bottom line, done. It's really a rule to protect the players when you really think about it, because it's meant to be like, oh, that looked bad, we're going to call a 5, let's review it. Oh, okay, never mind, it's not that bad, just a 2. So why there are 4 officials, we'll say 3, because the one below the goal line was screened on a play, he couldn't see it, totally understandable. Why are there 3 officials not making a call, period, when even in full flight, full motion, watching the video back, you can clearly see that Wilson initiates contact with Carlo's head? I mean, it's clear as day. Make the call it a 5, and then just review it. And if you really don't think it's a 5, then give him the 2. But you can't let a hit like that go unpunished, because you can't be like, oh, Department of Player Safety will deal with it, because
Play was stopped. It's not like the guy was on the ice. It's not like they didn't have time to do anything.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I don't know where in between the hospital call and the stretcher coming out, they couldn't maybe look up at the goddamn Megatron.
Right. Yeah, or the iPad that they have sitting 2 feet away from them in the penalty box. Like, and this is an issue we've seen all year, like, just really, really inconsistent officiating. I mean, I get that the NHL, because of the...
It stretched a little thin.
Yeah, and I understand that, because each of the refs are staying in their division as well, right? So they don't have the opportunity to send their best referee crews, because this is what the NHL does when it's like a rivalry game, a big night, games that have potential to get really nasty.
Not even that. I think there's also an issue present with bias of this.
What do you mean?
I think that when you have the same refs reviewing all of these games in a row, that you start to have some call bias.
You mean because you're seeing the same guys on the ice over and over again?
Yeah.
I mean,
when you work the same players' games every time, you're gonna have a different rapport with them. It's not the same as another ref who might be more strict, or like when I ref, like if I know that someone does a certain move and it's not dirty, let's say, and I know it's not dirty because like I know the move, but someone else might look at it as it is dirty, I'm going to let it go, whereas the other person might call it every time. Like, let's say you go for a certain type of hip check, and it's a close one, and I think it's clean, the other person thinks it's not. They'll call it not every time. I'll call it clean every time. You start to build a different rapport and game management with these refs when you do the same ones over and over again.
Let's see. I want to see if I can find who officiated this game.
If it's West, we're done. We're giving up.
Let's see.
I don't think it's West.
Game summary.
I think it was that kid with the big forehead.
Officials, no, it's Dean Morton, which, okay, it's Dean Morton and Pierre Lambert, which, shocker, right? Dean Morton gets it wrong again, but, Dean Morton, Pierre Lambert, Julien Fournier, and Ryan Daisy. All 4 of you guys, whoever was below the goal line, you got to pass. The rest of you guys, you got to make the call. Bottom line. Because you have the ability to review it. make the call. Put your arm up, dude. Because the other issue is when you don't make a call, then this has to get settled on the ice. And
He got
luckily,
fought. Two people fought him that night.
yeah. So, like, luckily for the NHL in this instance, it was Tom Wilson who was willing to fight people because he knew he had to answer the bell. But if this was somebody like Brad Marchand, who never answers the bell because he's a rat too, then it would have gotten nasty. Because then it's like, all right, Marchand's not going to answer the bell. I'm just going to go put Pasternak through the boards. Or,
Yeah, it's just gonna turn into a who can put who superstar through the boards faster competition.
right, like, so Wilson hits Brandon Carlo, nothing nothing happens. Someone's like, all right, looks like it's Nick Backstrom's turn to go through the boards.
Oh, or Captain Captain Patrick's coming through the middle. All right, time to or Patrice get him real lined up real quick and knee.
Yeah, and that's the exact type of thing that the NHL wants to avoid. So, like, luckily in this instance, Wilson was willing to fight, but what prevents you from having to do this is 10 in a game, and nobody on the ice had the guts to make that call. So, that's something the NHL is gonna have to look into, and that tape, I guarantee you. That particular tape is going to be used in training sessions going forward as, hey, here's what not to do.
If this were the UFC, they would have been fired.
Absolutely. 100%. And it's got to stop. Tom Wilson's got to stop. The Capitals got to figure something out. And the NHL needs to figure something out about, A, the referees that were doing that game, and B, if this guy comes back and he's still hitting people in the head, you got to ding him for 41 games or something like that. Like, just some outlandish, outrageous suspension just to try to screw his head on straight. Because
this is like that video you sent. This is he had 5 suspensions, but he had way more suspension-worthy encounters that just never got escalated.
Right.
In that thread, there was, I think, 10 or 12 different videos or scenarios where the guy got carted off or got injured and didn't play again that season or that game.
And they're all headshots. They're all headshots.
Headshots, knee to knees, boarding. Like, I don't understand. Like, what is he doing? That it's like I said, he's just careless. He's skating through the middle. He sees someone on the other team. It's like some asshole in high school when you walk past someone, you give him a little shoulder. He's doing that, but instead, this is the NHL, and he's doing it at center ice, going 20 miles an hour on skates.
Hitting people in the head.
or just obliterating their knee with, like, his fucking thigh. Like, they'll just be skating past, and he's like, my thigh looks really good stretched out.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, it's got to stop. And if that takes throwing the book at him next time you hit somebody in the head, and even if the hit itself isn't worthy of 41 games, but you just decide to gas him for 41 games because you got to send a message, I'm all for it. Get him out. He's got to figure it out.
Throw the book at him. I feel like if any coach were to throw a book at him, it'd be Torts.
And that, you know what it is too? Like, you want to know what's funny? Who was the coach in the 2 years between the suspensions?
Oh, okay. I know what you're going to say. What's his name?
It's Barry Trotz. Barry Trotz, for 2 years, I guarantee you, looked him in the eye and said, if you do so, because we've seen it. Dude, he benches Matt Barzal for a bad turnover in the neutral zone. You can't tell me he didn't look Wilson in the eye and said, if you do something that hurts this team and you put us down for 5 minutes, you're not seeing the ice for the next 3 games. I guarantee you he had some kind of open rapport with him like that. But guess what?
Trotz definitely gave him some business about what he had to be doing and what he wasn't doing.
Because, and I hate to say it, because I honestly, genuinely think Peter Laviolette is a good hockey coach. Laviolette clearly does not have that kind of edge in him that you need with a guy like that.
Laviolette clearly has no control over that room in general.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. They've had their fair share of incidents this year that have showed you that there's got to be something missing.
So there's some player management hiccup there. And I think part of the issue comes with Ovi being who he is and how good he is. I think you have almost a LeBron scenario where you have this superstar who knows he's the best, so he chooses to do as he pleases. And while that's all good and fun, someone like Sid is a lot better role model and hockey player than him anyway. So,
I mean,
I,
to to just go back to what we were talking about, we saw during the Barry Trotz era, there were times when Ovechkin was playing on the fourth line. Like, Trotz wasn't
Ovechkin got
afraid.
benched.
Yeah, like
He was
Trotz wasn't
benched.
afraid to look at him and be like, I don't care who you are. I don't care how good you are. If you're not doing the thing that you want, that thing that I want out of you, then you're not getting ice time. And that's the
If you don't
number
play your
one.
part, you don't get it.
Yeah, and that's the number one way to control these hockey players is ice time. You take away their ice time, ooh, that's bad.
The only person who doesn't seem to fucking care is Mika Zibanejad.
Yeah, well, he's had a rough go of things, and Quinn's had the line blender out for a.
Yeah. So, if are we just about wrapped up with this topic?
If you want to move on, then yeah, we can move on. I just want to again, one last time, Capitals, you gotta figure it out, dude. Ovechkin,
I won.
gotta figure it out, dude. It's you gotta figure something out with this guy because this cannot continue because he's going to kill somebody, or he's gonna end up getting himself like some guy who's like 36 with no career left is just gonna punch this guy in the back of the head, and 100% he'll deserve it. If he gets Todd Bertuzzi, then what did you think? What did you think was gonna happen?
I could see Tom Wilson coming through, running into Johnny Gaudreau as hard and as fast as he could, and Mark Giordano saying, "All right, today's the day I retire,"
Or better yet,
and just
Milan Lucic.
yeah, or Lucic coming through and just saying, "All right, today's the day I retire. My ugly face is just about done playing hockey anyway. My fucking broken 6 different direction nose."
Jeez. You sounded like you had something that you wanted to get on.
I want to ask you how you think injuries are affecting the season for teams, because you see, like, I feel like this season you're seeing injuries affect teams a lot more when they lose a singular player. I feel like every man down at this point makes a much big difference.
You know why I think that probably could be the case is because of how few AHL teams are playing right now. So when a guy goes down, the guys that are coming off the taxi squad, they've been doing is practicing. There's a big difference between
Yeah,
somebody getting hurt and calling up somebody who has 30 games in the AHL played this season versus somebody who's just been practicing for 3 weeks. So I definitely think that I think I would agree with you. I mean, certain players going down, like look at Boston at the beginning of the year. I mean, without Pasternak, they scored like what 3 goals in like 6 games.
look at Dallas. They lost. They went on a streak where they lost Radulov, they lost Gurianov, and they lost Hintz. And now Hintz and Gurianov are back, and they're winning.
They just waylaid the Chicago Blackhawks last night.
Last night, yeah. But and then
The Avs with McKinnon. I mean, granted, look, you lose McKinnon, that's a huge loss, but still.
the Avalanche are the strangest hiccup in the NHL. I don't know what to speak about them on. They're they have, like, McKinnon should not even matter to that team to an extent with the roster that they have. It's absolutely ridiculous that they play as badly as they do.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because we've seen superstar teams lose superstar players and still just kind of be okay. I mean, Malkin, granted, he's not doing anything this year, but statistically
I
speaking, when Sid has been out, he's above a point per game.
Malkin actually the past, I would like to say that in the second half of the season has picked it up a lot. He's been playing really well as of recently, actually. And I think playing the Rangers like 4 times in the past like month helped with that. But yeah,
um,
Malkin's been playing better. But I think that you're seeing a lot of teams lose guys who aren't even in their core, and the team is just faulting on it.
do you think that there's anything else besides maybe the AHL issue?
I think if you ask me, it looks like a lot of the players aren't in a lot of great shape. And then you see other players who are in the most insane shape. And this is like always an AHL thing, but I think it's really exasperated this season when you have guys like Barzell and Forsberg and Ekblad and who else has been playing these absolutely insanely long shifts.
I mean,
McDavid and Draisaitl, both what they always do.
I was gonna
You
say
had these
Seth Jones,
guys.
but he always does too.
I feel like we're actually just losing depth of the team, and that's the issue. When you start to have these superstars take the time, you're taking away from the team. And yeah, do you want maybe Barzell to have as much ice time as possible? Yeah, but there's something to be said about a coach who lets a player go out there and just run it to the other players as well.
I think the other thing we could be seeing is maybe we're noticing the impact of these players leaving because of the condensed schedule. Um, like in traditional years, if your guy gets hurt, um, maybe you play a couple games at home, but then you go on like a Western road trip, right? So you only have 3 games in 6 nights, and then you come home. Whereas this season, it's like every week it's 3 or 4 games a week, some back to back. So it's like, oh my god, McKinnon went out of the lineup, and the Avs lost like 3 out of their 4 games. Well, it's like, yeah, but they only lost 3 out of those 4 games because they played 4 games in a week. Um, but I do agree with you. It's not even that too. Like, it just the teams look like they're just lost without some of these guys. Um, I think that the conditioning has a lot to do with it. I think the lack of play for your depth guys, especially the young guys, a lot of the times when you have a guy that goes out, we'll call it the young guy, we'll give him a shot, right? He's been playing really well in the AHL. They don't really, a lot of the young guys, they're not playing in the AHL, so they don't have that adjustment period. They're just practicing. And say what you want about practice, bottom line, end of the day, practice is not game time. it's
Practice in hockey doesn't mean very it at an NHL level. It practically means nothing.
it it just it's I think more so than in any other sport because of we always talk about hockey IQ, right? But more so than any other sport, hockey IQ is so much harder to translate from game or from practice to game, um, that it's just hard. Like, honestly, for a lot of these players, they're probably better off getting games in the AHL than practicing at an NHL level. I think that's probably you can make a very good argument for that. Um,
I agree.
it's tough, and especially like I said, with so few AHL teams playing, especially the guys that aren't on a taxi squad. Like, think about it: if you're not on a taxi squad and your AHL team's not playing, what are you doing? You're just practicing with the team, but you don't really get to take the road trips, so you don't get those practices. It's hard. It's definitely a tough job. It's a tough ask, especially being on a taxi squad too is also a tough ask in its own way because it's like you got to be ready every night. You might be in a lineup, but there's also like 8 other guys that are on a taxi squad with you, so it's a mental game at that point. You're like, do I really have to get ready tonight? And then you kind of check out, and then it's like, oh, contact tracing, this guy's out, you're in. You're like, oh jeez, like an hour before game time, and now I'm playing. Like, um, it's interesting. And then the funny part is you have teams like Tampa Bay who like they're missing Kucherov and they haven't missed a beat.
Yeah, Patrick Kane. Doesn't even care that Taves is gone.
Patrick Kane is missing Jonathan Tays and Kirby Doc. The first line center is Pew Suter, who's having a good season, but let's not pretend he's Jonathan Tays or Kirby Doc, and he's 5 points behind Connor McDavid.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we saw with the Maple Leafs when the Maple Leafs lost Matthews for a couple games. They went on a skid, and Matthews really hasn't looked the same since he's been back from injury. The Buffalo Sabres, by the way, Jack Eichel's hurt. So now what for you guys? And before any Chicago fans, and I doubt he listens, but if he is, one specific Chicago fan that our friend group knows, no, they're not trading Jack Eichel to Chicago.
And no, Chicago is not going to be a Stanley Cup contender anytime soon.
Yeah, not happening, bud. Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about. Teams that traditionally rely on depth, teams like the Boston Bruins or, the Dallas Stars. It seems like the depth just maybe isn't quite up to par this year, and that could be due to a number of different things. It might also have to do with the fact that you're playing the same teams over and over again. So at a certain point, you kind of know what to expect. So when a guy goes down, he gets hurt, you're like, all right, this is a weakness we're going to exploit, right? As opposed to like if the Islanders make a trip out west without Matt Barzell, Anaheim's not really going to game plan all that hard for that because they're like, we're playing them twice the whole season. So who
It's
cares?
also you can also only game plan so much, but experience and time playing against someone is completely different.
100%.
Like I could tell you how to play against someone and break it down for you, but like
that doesn't mean I'm not going to get my ankles broken.
Yeah, I could tell you how I should go play against them, but like when you're in that scenario, when you're in the scenario, you'll really figure out what you're supposed to do. Because it's an ever adapting game. The game is about current adaptations and micro adjustments.
100%. I completely agree with that. And that's a very good point to make too. That again, you can game plan all you want, but you still like your coach can look at you and be like, all right, when McKinnon comes across that line, he's gonna make the inside out move, and then he's gonna try to get to his forehand. And you're like, all right, I got it, coach. And then you step out on the ice, he snaps your ankle in half, rips one top shelf, and the coach is like, well, I told you what to do. And you're like, listen, coach, like.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like you have to make micro adjustments. Like if you see him go to the boards, and you expect him to come to the middle, you have to have a micro adjustment in your head to have a plan for the boards. Like it, and let's say he's never done the boards play before. There's no footage of him doing it. Because let's say there's just mannerisms that you just pick up, different signs that people do, telltales, the vibe that you get from people. It's just different when you play against them a lot, and when you're playing against them at the frequency they're doing, and you also have to realize this is the highest level of analysis and play that these guys have, so they're breaking down just about everything they see. So playing against the same guy 4 times in a month is crazy to them compared to playing against him twice in a month. Those last 2 games against them are going to be way different than those first 2 games.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the nature of the tight schedule that a lot of these teams have to deal with, and the whole COVID-19 season really. Everything that you said is essentially just emphasized because of how frequently you're playing against these guys. So how long are we? We're about 56 minutes in, 59 minutes. Do you have any final thoughts on anything we discussed or anything you want to discuss on this episode, or any final quips?
I would like to say that I'm a fantasy god. Now, if you're interested how our league is going, I'm turning it up. I'm coming back to win it all. I'm going to win my damn trophy. Because Rob is negative 0.5 points on the night.
Yeah, because Flower got scored on. Boo.
And so, if you're interested in our fantasy league at all, we're gonna drop a picture to the link of the standings in the chat.
Are we?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I clinched my playoff spot, so
You're okay posting it.
I'm 6-1 this year. Already clinched the playoffs. The Bikini Bottom Rock Stars are indeed going to the playoffs this year. So, yeah, but yeah, if you're good on everything else, um, just want to thank you guys for watching. Next week we're gonna be doing our halfway mark episode. So we're
Oh
gonna be
boy.
bringing back, the awards we like to do. Um, yes, there will be a bum award. Don't you worry. Um, we're gonna talk about. I think this time, since it's now halfway, we're gonna do both our podcast awards and we're gonna do the NHL awards. You can do some tracking and talk about that kind of stuff. So, halfway episode next week. Keep an eye out for that. And at some point in this second half of the season, we are going to be doing another hot takes episode. I want to try to do at least one of those this season because they're just so much fun. So keep an eye out for that too. So halfway episode and the hot takes episode coming at you soon. And I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys again next time.